listened to it first, and then I had the chance to go through and read it and pull the points out. So it was awesome.
Do you do that with all the books? Is that kind of
No,
how
you know what? There's so few authors actually do audiobooks. There's literally, I can think of maybe about 3 that I've interviewed that did the audiobook almost at the same time they released the regular book.
This was the first time it was a little bit late, yes, only because of Audible, but we had it within 10 days of releasing of the print into the audio. So yeah, I sell actually more audiobooks than I do regular books.
Do you
It's hard
really?
to believe. Yeah, I can't believe it.
Wow.
Not including like bulk sales and things like that, but from individual sales, the audiobook does fantastic.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump right into it. So once again, great book, Content Inc. So there we are. We're showing it. I will plug it away on my website and on the posts that I've get going. First thing I was going to talk about is what I love about the fact is first chapter, you start talking about goals. So why are goals important?
Why are we doing this in the first place, right? It's the same. I feel this way. If you're going to go through the whole process of building a platform and building a business on top of that platform, which is what we talk about in Content Inc., you better get your life right. You better figure out what are your personal goals, what are your spiritual goals, what are your family goals, and get those really set, because you're going to have to make some sacrifices in some areas to make this thing work. You're going to be creating a lot of content. You're going to be doing a lot of things that are unnatural to you, and I want to make sure that you're doing them for the right reasons. And that it changed my life, the fact that I write down my goals and review them every day. It's it's the number one thing that I point to, and I say I got my life in order. Things feel good. I'm happy. I'm doing the things I need to do for my kids and my family, and I just feel that this business stuff is all secondary. Let's do it for the right reasons. Let's make sure you're feeling good about your life in general. So I feel like if you're going to do anything, you better make sure you have your life set first, and then we'll do the business stuff secondary.
That's awesome. You know what? And I'm a firm believer in goals too. I review and look at my goals almost on a daily basis as well.
It's awesome.
Some
Makes
days
a
I kind of
difference.
let them slip,
Yeah.
but most days I look at them and just try to say what's important to me. And it's great. Picked that habit up from Brian Tracy. So and I'm glad to see that you've
beautiful. I love Brian Tracy.
He's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
He's a Canadian, so I love him. So because I'm Canadian, right? So there you go. Gotta love him. He's just from north of where I live. So. Hey, the other part here is that the Content Inc. model is what I thought was great. It was on page 19. Not that I'm going to think that you remember this, but it was over 2 years and countless interviews. We've been able to deconstruct and re-engineer the Content Inc. model. Blah blah blah. It goes through a whole bunch of stuff, but it talks about there's 6 spots here that that you kind of come down as a foundation for the Content Inc. model and its success. Now we'll go into kind of a couple of these different ones, but can you nail the 3 off the top or the 6 off the top of your head?
Oh, you're talking about the Content Inc. model?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you start with the sweet spot, then we do the content tilt. That's how we're telling our differentiated story. Then we want to build the base. And once we build the base, we want to harvest the audience in and build our audience and our subscribers. Then once we do that and create a minimum viable audience, then we want to diversify into other areas outside of our core platform, and then we're going to monetize the platform. So, and that's what I love about the model is that most of the case studies we went through, Chris, it's sort of like happy accidents, including myself. It's like we sort of stumble upon this publishing model, but everyone followed the same 6 steps, which is why I think we hit gold when we actually looked at this and said, oh my gosh, all these companies are in different areas of the world and different industries are all doing it the same way, and they just didn't even know it. So what I love about the book is that I think that people can now get the book, take that formula, and speed themselves to market instead of sort of stumbling around and trying to find them. We're like, hey, here's the model. Here's how you do it. You just have to do these 6 steps, and you'll make it work for you. And that's what I just loved about it.
And you know what? I got to agree with you 100% on this, because when I listened to the audiobook, when I read the book again, I'm going like this. I'm going like, why am I not doing that? Why am I not doing that? And it really makes you start thinking, what do I have to do to actually, and this is more towards the monetization at the end piece, because there's a lot of stuff that I've done beforehand, but absolutely well worth picking up and just to read just for that part of it as well. So,
well, it's a simple model too. It's not like, what I love about it is when I go through like building the base, it's a really simple model. One content type, one content platform, consistently delivered over time. And I say, we're creating content and distributing it all over the place, but really this simple model is the one that works the best. And we've sort of forgot ourselves in what just basic publishing is and how it works. And this is a model that's been used for hundreds of years. This is nothing new. Yeah, the channels change, the platforms change, the technology changes, but the way that we build an audience has not changed over this period of time. And I just love the simplicity of it. And it's just like, you just have to do the work.
Absolutely. Hey, so the one of the things I love about this is, I'm going to ask you about this, is why do people need to be patient with the Content Inc. model?
It takes time to build a loyal audience.
Bingo.
It's just like, I mean, I think that's where, if you look at how most businesses are creating content, and let's say they're trying to drive leads, they get that lead in, they create an ebook, some gated piece of content, they get the lead, and they try to extract value from that lead immediately, which is not the right way to do it. What we really want to do is we want to create so much value for our audience, build that audience over time, and then once they know, like, and trust us, then we can extract that value. Then we can profit from it. Then you can drive your products and services or whatever those are. And we're so in a hurry to extract that value, we might actually be hurting that customer. We probably are hurting that customer relationship. So if we just think about the way media companies have done it since the dawn of time, you end up having this allegiance toward this media brand or toward this company that's delivering you value. And what we found out with all the case studies is that once that's done over a period of time, and it generally takes over 6 months to do that, they pretty much will buy whatever you put in front of them. Because they trust you so much. But we've got to get to that point where we're at that level of trust and you're just delivering that much value without selling yourself, as most companies do. It's all that bait and switch. Like, I'll give you this really good piece of content, but I'm going to sell you. Here comes the sell. And what we really want is we want our customers to kind of email us back or contact us back and say, how do you make money? Like, I really love that question. My favorite question when people come up to me and they say, how do you make a living?
Wait, Joe, hold on for a sec. How do you make money?
Exactly. I want that. I mean, I know how we make money. We make money. We drive our monetization model through advertising, sponsorships, paid registrations to events. We actually have about 10 different ways we generate revenue from it. But most of the time, when somebody signs up to an email newsletter that we send out, we actually are pretty hands off, because what we want to do, we know with our data, we want to sign them up to 3 different subscriptions. Like, we want them to subscribe to our email newsletter, to our magazine chief content officer, sign up and subscribe to our podcast, This Old Marketing. And we know that number 3 is powerful, because if somebody signed up for 3 different things, they're much more likely to actually come to our big event, Content Marketing World, pay for our training, actually spend a lot of money. So just because the first contact, it doesn't mean anything. We've just started the relationship there. Now we want to build that relationship by, we want to be the octopus, right? We want to wrap our customers in content love. Yep. And bring them so close to us that they'll basically end up buying whatever we put in front of them.
That's awesome. So, hey, look, the one of the things you talk about in kind of the first couple of chapters are, do you need a product or service to start content marketing?
No, absolutely not. Actually, if you have a product most companies have a product or service. They have a defined business model before they start doing content marketing. I get that. But if you're asking me the best case scenario is to be completely audience focused and focus on building subscribers, but solving your customers' pain points, your audience pain points on a consistent basis, listening to their needs, and you know them so well, and then launching products or services. I'll give you an example. Brian Clark at Copyblogger is maybe the best example of this, where he blogged for 19 months in a row, didn't push out any products or services, built over 200,000 subscribers, and then started to launch different products or services because he knew his pain points of his customers. What they need. They needed this SEO thing. They needed this content management thing. And he started to build it and come up with it. Now he's one of the fastest growing software as a service companies on the planet because he didn't start out with a product. And a lot of times, when we have a product or service, we make our own product or service or the brand the hero of the story. We're starting to talk about things that you can't create content without pitching in the product or the service or coming at it from this angle, because we're always thinking we've got to sell something. If you don't have something to sell, you're basically, well, what's their need? What's that pay? I'm going to focus completely on that. You can do both, right? I mean, a lot of companies, you already have a product or service. I get it. That's the model. But I think we were really benefited at Content Marketing Institute that we didn't have one. And we basically just focus on delivering value to enterprise marketers about content marketing on an ongoing basis. And once we built that, we started to say, oh, here's an opportunity here. This person came up to us, this company came up to us, and we started to launch products and services once we built that audience. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because it's like, well, it seems like it would be harder because we don't have a product or service, but actually, since you're so audience focused, it's a lot easier.
It's, you know, it's like watching like a guy like John Lee Dumas who,
Yep.
you know, same thing as you just watch the progression of his podcasts and stuff he's doing is all of a sudden like all these ideas that he's spinning off. And the same with you, right? As I mean, when I read the book, I go through and I go, wow, I didn't realize you did all this stuff, right? And then it kind of dawns on you that, well, yeah, actually, I kind of did kind of know you did all this stuff. But I mean, you got your, you know, your event you throw in Cleveland. It's Cleveland, isn't it? Or,
Yep, Cleveland.
Yeah, each year. And all the other peripherals that you have wrapped around it. So it's utterly amazing. If you listen to people, they're going to tell you what their wants and desires are. And all of a sudden, you know, hey, if like you say, if you go long enough, eventually you're going to figure out a product or a service that you can wrap around that stuff that's going to help them out. So,
And that's the key. You have to be patient. It takes time, and that's where most people fall down. Like a lot of people think, oh, well, the content. It's actually, yes, there's always a content quality issue, but that's usually not the reason why people fail. It's usually because they stop. And we see that any size company is because they're not consistent and they stop. That is the number one reason why it fails.
yeah, and I think the other side of it is I've been doing this. I mean, you've been doing it longer than me. I'm doing this about 7 years now, and the reason why I do this, I love it. It's fun. It's so much fun to just create content and do stuff like that as well. And then eventually stuff comes out of it, which is great. But
well, the passion, that's why, like, for an entrepreneur, small business, passion's so important because you know that it takes a while to do this. So you better have the passion that you want to get up every day, every week, every month and be creating that content. And it does take a while. And that's also the opportunity because you have that passion and because you're focused on that audience, you're going to do things differently than a larger company. Actually, it's the whole we talk about that in the book, obviously. I believe in this whole David versus Goliath thing. I think that the Davids of the world have such an opportunity when it comes to content marketing because you can move faster, you can listen to your customers a little bit better, and you can focus on a content niche that honestly most large companies, they don't want to spend the time on that. It's too small. Yeah. But you can come in there and you can build a whole marketplace out of that they're not willing to do.
Absolutely. Hey, look, some of the stuff you start talking about in here is, and I'm skipping over so much stuff because I want people to actually buy the book or get the audiobook because it's awesome. I have to say that to everyone I interview, right? So
I know. I know.
But no, I truly, actually, this time I truly mean it, Joe. It's like, no, it is. It's awesome. It's an awesome book. I love your stuff. It's great. You talk about the different platforms that are available. So, there's you can podcast, you could do video, you could do content, you could blog, whatever it is. What should someone look at, or how should they think about when they're selecting a platform? What should they think about?
Well, first of all, there's no one right way. And that's what we talk about in the book. We've seen it successful with podcast platforms. We've seen it successful with videos. We've seen it successful with in-person events. We've seen it successful with blogs. First of all, what's the best for you? There's two things. What are you most comfortable doing as an entrepreneur, small business? But also, like, what's the story best told as? The story could be best told as a podcast series. It could be best sold as a video. Maybe it's something very visual, or maybe your audience is there. That makes the most sense when you're thinking about those types of things. For us, it was a blog. It was, I had minimal resources, had absolutely no money. Like, what am I going to do? Well, blog, it didn't take that much to get going. It was only my time. So I'm going to create the blog on a consistent basis. And that's how we started it. So any company with minimal resources, you just basically need a CMS system like a WordPress, or you need an email marketing platform, and you're good to go. I mean, you're in business. You're 90% of the way there. So you don't need all this technology to get going. Same thing with a podcast, actually. You use a service like Libsyn, which basically they'll house all your podcasts. They'll get them promoted to iTunes and Stitcher and whatnot. You get a good solid microphone, and you're in business.
You're rocking.
Videos are a little bit more, but I mean, if you think about, whether you're using any kind of video editing service, which doesn't cost that much today, you can do. I mean, my kids are doing video editing, and they're much better. Yeah, they're much better at it than I would ever be. So I think you got to think a lot about that. I think the most important thing is how is the story best told? Your differentiated story, your content tilt, what really separates you from the rest, that you can cut through the clutter. And then you think about, well, what makes the most sense for me as an organization as well. So you kind of take those hand in hand. By far, most people go to the blog setup because you immediately then can have the blog set up, and then you can start setting up the email subscriptions. If you set it up as a video on YouTube or podcast on iTunes, you got to remember you've got a ways to go to get your email subscriptions, because email subscriptions, that's the number one thing. So if you get like a John Lee Dumas, is great. He's got a couple 100,000 listeners on his podcast, but all he's focusing on is for his calls to action or getting them to a website or a particular landing page to get their email address, because he doesn't have access to that data through iTunes. So same thing for YouTube. You might have a lot of subscribers, but you've got to get those subscribers turned into email subscriptions. So just think about it from that step. So if you want to short circuit it, yeah, you can do the blog, but you've got a lot of work to promote it, a lot more than you'd have for iTunes and YouTube, since they've got built-in communities already.
Well, since you're talking about email, I mean, it was one of the questions I was going to bring up is why is it that emails are so important to an organization? So, I mean, knowing that I'm cutting these into segments, why is it that email subscriptions are so important to someone who's starting out?
Yeah. So if you look at all the ways that somebody can subscribe to your content, they can become a fan of yours on Facebook, they can follow you on Twitter, they can become a subscriber on YouTube, all the way up the chain. LinkedIn and Medium, they all have different ways that people can subscribe. You basically have no control over any of those connections. All the platforms own the content and the connections. You basically are borrowing it. They're letting you have a connection with that audience. The only thing where you have the most control is through email. Number one, email subscriptions. Number two, print subscriptions. I know it's a very old world way to think about it, but if you look at the way media companies have set themselves up, and the ones that, even new media companies that are super successful, like a BuzzFeed, look at BuzzFeed. They have all these amazing things that they're doing on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat. But when you follow the breadcrumbs and you look at their calls to action, where do they go? Email subscription.
That's all back to the website, isn't it?
Yeah, because why is that? Because tomorrow, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube could all make the decision and say, I'm sorry. I know I gave you access to that audience, but I'm not going to give you access to that anymore. And they'd be completely within their right to do that.
Yep.
And I don't want to give up that kind of control. It's very hard to run a business when you can't control the data and the connections like that. So we want to convert those to email whenever we can. And I don't know where we're going to be, Chris, in 2 years or 3 years, but right now, by far, email is the number one priority. And we see that with all the examples in the book. Every one of them is either focused on initially from email, or they learned along the way that, oh my gosh, I better get my act together because I had all these subscribers on YouTube, but then YouTube's not showing them my videos anymore. So I've got to take some control back here.
Well, actually, a couple of things. I mean, you got some great examples in the book, but what's a couple of ways people can get email subscribers? I know you use Pippity. I use Pippity as well.
Yep. Yeah. So
what a couple of ways?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm a big fan of Pippity, which is you can use an integration with WordPress, your content management system, and it's a popover. It's a pop-up. And initially, I didn't want to use that. Because it just didn't feel right to hit somebody with a popover or pop-up, but we tested it. We now get 65% of our daily signups through Pippity, and they become some of our best customers as we follow them through the buyer's journey. So I absolutely love that, because you got to remember, 80% of the people that go to your website, your web content, they probably will never come back again. So we've got to have a really compelling offer. So that means your calls to action. If you think about how your site is set up or your content experience is set up, I want to make sure that if they're coming to that, we've got content offers all over the place. And it's not try my demo, buy my product. I'm all about getting them into another content experience to get their email address, to get permission for me to communicate with them on an ongoing basis. So I've got right side, bottom side, in the middle of the content itself, it's fine. Popovers is great. Co-registration is great, where you can work with a partner. Yep. And if that partner has a like audience that you're trying to reach, you can work out a deal where if they check the box, they can get your email too. If you pay buying lists and sending out an offer, webinars are great for that as well. Anything that you can think of and use from that standpoint. Pay-per-click even. Instead of pay-per-click and putting your offer like, hey, get my great product or service, say, download this ebook, this white paper, whatever, and get signed up for our weekly newsletter, give them that value. it'll make a difference. And just if you focus everything on email subscriptions, that's the one regret that I have, Chris, is that we didn't focus on it soon enough.
Yeah. What do you use for an email system right now?
Right now, we use a marketing automation system called Acton.
Okay.
Is one, and we integrate it with everything, and we're trying to get a little savvier at understanding the data and integrating that with Salesforce. Obviously, it didn't start out that way. We're a little bit more sophisticated than we were. And initially, it was just a flat out a simple email. We use Mailchimp and WordPress, and that got us through the first 5 years, believe it or not.
Nice. Good way to go. So that's good stuff for people to know. Hey,
Absolutely.
so I know I got to be cognizant of the time. We got about 9 minutes left, I think, here. So one of the things that people probably struggle with is creating content. So do you have a couple ideas how people can kind of create content?
So if you are like some of the gifted people in the world and you can create your own content and tell your own stories, then you don't need to listen to any of this. But the most important thing is that the strategy comes from you, right? You want to keep the strategy. Everything else can be outsourced. I'm not one of these firm believers that you have to insource or fully outsource. I say you focus on what you're really good at. If you're really good at certain parts of the story, then great, then keep those. If there's other things you're not good at, like editing, proofreading, search engine optimization of your content, that all can be outsourced. What I love to do, like a nice little tip, if you're in a particular trade, I always go to the leading trade publication in that industry, and I go to the masthead, and I look at all the contributors of that magazine, and they're usually freelance contractors. They're all looking to do work with companies like yourself. You go reach out to them, and they'd be happy to write stories for you, edit for you. There's a lot of video producers out there. There's a lot of people to help from, if you wanted somebody to actually do a podcast for you. There's so many, there's more experts out there and ways that you can find them easier than ever before. So you have to make the decision. How important is your time? Like if you really want to go through the process and you want to spend 5 hours doing an article and you feel that that's what you have to do, then fine, that's what you have to do. But I'm more along the lines of, this is what I want to say. This is the raw content. This is the positioning. Here's the people that we should be interviewing. And I'll go give that assignment to somebody to do. And then we'll bring it back and that'll be an article. So I want to think about it. Have you think of like you were a publisher, like you're a media mogul, and how you would use the resources the best you can. You don't always have to do it yourself. But if you can, if you're a great content creator, then fine, you're good to go.
Well, you are a media mogul. Hey, the other thing too, chapter 10, you talked about the content calendar. Why is a content calendar so critical?
Because what will happen is if you don't plan out your content, just like you want to plan out your life and plan out your business, things are just going to happen. So what happens is you get to a point where you need to send out, because we're going to send it out consistently. Every day, every week, every month, whatever the case is. And if you don't have that planned out, something's going to happen. Oh, what happened? We better go get the content. Where are we going to get the content from? Let's go grab. Oh, no, we're in trouble. Bob's out today. What are we going to do? Bob was going to get the content to us. We've got to plan this out ahead of time. So you want to make sure that you have an annual content review with your team. Maybe it's just you or your team, and figure out what are we going to talk about this year. And then you start breaking it up into quarters and then into months. And what I want to do is I want you to be at least a month ahead of time to know what you're going to distribute. Most companies are like, oh, I got 2 blog posts to do this week. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. Oh my gosh. You don't want to get in that position. If you're a media company, you're really well planned out. We know that we're going to do the research here. We're going to do this blog post here. We've got this video series here. And then you can start to anticipate where you can get content, where there's opportunities at certain trade shows and interviews with certain people where you can actually access raw content that can pave the way for content throughout the end of the year. If there's a big trade show coming up, you could actually, if you planned ahead for that, you could create content for the rest of the year off of that. If you really do it well, because you've got everybody in one spot. So you might say, oh, we're going to get a couple interviewers here, some experts, get all that content and really make it work. So I want to make sure that that content calendar is set. We know what we're going to write about, when we're going to write about it. And then the most important thing is we want to know for each piece of content what the outcome is for the audience. And I want that in my content calendar. I want to know, what are we trying to help them live a better life, get a better job? What's in it for the audience? So we want to stay audience focused at every possible time instead of thinking more like most companies do is trying to pitch this product. We want to focus on the audience. It's all about them.
Beautiful. The other thing, one of the things you talk about, I got about like 2-3 questions left. I'm going to try to squeeze them in the next 5 minutes here. But you talk about repurposing content in different places. And one of the things I see is that people take kind of a piece of content and they'll kind of push it into different places. What's your thoughts on what's a couple of places that people can repurpose their content?
So what we want to do, if we're doing this right, is do a channel plan. There's so many places you could promote your content, right? I mean, there's SlideShare and LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Medium and Snapchat, God help us all, and all kinds of different things, right? So we've got to, first of all, that's what doing a strategy is. You've got to make decisions about what you're not going to do. So I want you to limit to the most productive channels that you believe are the ones that you should be in, where your customers are at. So maybe you're going to say, look, that's Twitter, that's LinkedIn, that's SlideShare, whatever. Okay, then now these are our channels. Now we can start to figure out, okay, what's our tone in those channels? What kind of content do we promote on those channels? What's our velocity of content? Is it once a week? Is it 3 times a day? I don't know. We've got to figure that out. And then we plan for that just like you will your blog, your own podcast, your own video. What we see mostly, Chris, is that people just throw up stuff whenever. We're going to do a tweet here. We're going to do this on. I've got a slideshow. Good. I'm going to put it on SlideShare. We want to think about it more strategically and know what we're going to do in each channel and when, just like if it was your own channel, your own platform. And so that's just all about that plan. So I would just say, look at all the ones that are available, but pick the ones that you're going to dedicate to, and maybe you'll just listen in the other ones. I want the ones that you're going to be all in on. That might be 2 or 3. Focus on those 2 or 3. Get a publishing calendar for those as well that's integrated with your own content hub or your base of whatever. That's probably your blog, and then work those together and make it work together. But focus and think about saying no where you should say no and yes to the few that you're going to make sense for your business.
Awesome tips. Last question, I promise, because we got about 3 minutes here. So one of the things I love about it is you've built this path throughout the book, and it goes through and it starts, you literally get into the monetization piece, which is really the last part of the kind of the 6 foundations. I think, a lot of people go into this thinking it's a get rich quick scheme, which typically it's not. But, when you got to start thinking about monetizing, how can someone start? A couple of ways that someone can monetize what they're doing. What couple of tips that you could share with us?
There's 9 different ways that we talk about in the book. Whether that's I'm going to run paid subscription programs, paid content. Like Darren Rouse at Digital Photography School, he sells ebooks. Brian Clark sells software as a service product. So does Moz. That's how he created it. John Lee Dumas sells all kinds of different products, also monetizes it through sponsorship. Ann Reardon monetizes hers through merchandising. So all different ways to do it. The most important thing is just to start and test a couple of these that make sense and maybe what you've been hearing from your audience. The way that we start, I love, mine is the favorite that we started. I talk about it in the book, the Benefactor Program. If you have an audience that people want to reach and we needed money just like somebody wants to get money. Basically, we found people that wanted to reach that audience that were non-competitive, and we had them spend a set amount of money per year, and we called them benefactors. And they gave us a good chunk of money per year, and we had them, basically, they got a little ad on the site, they got their logo at the bottom of the page, and it was almost like they were helping with the movement. I know a lot of people can't do that, but that worked really well for us. And here 7 years later, it's still one of our best-selling opportunities, and we've been selling out ever since that time. It's hardly ever been open to do those types of things. So that was a great model. And if you look at the way Brian Clark did it, was fantastic. He tested things. He would talk to his readers on an ongoing basis, say, what's your big pain point? What's keeping you up at night? And they'd say, I need this, or I don't have this software or this technology. He listened to that. And then he went back with his team and he said, I think we can create that. And that's what he did. And it absolutely worked for him. Some of them, Seth Price monetized his podcast through a Kickstarter campaign. There's so many different ways to do it. And that's the whole deal is once you create an audience that knows, likes, and trusts you, you can monetize it many different ways. So just get started doing 1 or 2, but you need to be talking with your readers on an ongoing basis, actually talking to them, email them, try to call them on occasion, talk to them. It'll make a big difference, and then you can try to decide what's going to make sense from a product or service standpoint.
Awesome information. Hey, Joe, appreciate your time. I know you got to get going. So thank you very much.